Why now? That's the question that cracks open this case in 2023, years after everyone in Austin thought the story was finished and the courtroom lights dimmed. A procedural appeal. A quiet audit of hotel keycard logs. An upgraded frame-by-frame reprocess of elevator video. None of it headline stuff. Yet together, these small things tug on the thread of a December night and make the whole fabric strain. We return to an ordinary Saturday, December 7, 2019, because the ordinary is where the truly chilling moments like to hide. Lily Hartman stepped into downtown with the restless grace of someone about to start her real life. 22, bright, stubborn in the best way. She had saved, planned, cut her long hair for a children's wig charity back in Ohio because even her goodbyes had to help someone. That evening she zipped her black dress, tossed a small crossbody bag on her shoulder, and left a cheap hostel near Congress Avenue at just after 6. She messaged a friend, "Quick drink, then I'll call." Simple. Confident. The future hums like a neon sign when you're 22. He was already nearby. Brandon Cole, 26, soft voice, crisp shirt that had seen better days, a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He told people he managed things, stores, teams, big accounts, stories that floated on the surface until you poked them and watched them sink. He was living in a high-floor room at a glass and steel hotel that reflected the city's nightlife back onto itself like a trick mirror. He knew how to work a lobby. He knew how to laugh at small jokes. He knew how long an elevator took to reach his floor. They met in public as you're supposed to. A rooftop bar with overwatered plants and music 2 notches too loud. A second place with worn brick and tables etched by 100 first dates. He held her bag for a moment, too helpful, too fast, claiming he was looking for a lost receipt. She took it back with a polite smile because Midwestern habits die hard. She texted her brother Mark to say the view was nice. She sent Jenna, her younger sister, a picture of the skyline, just a blur of light but enough to say I'm okay. It's easy to narrate hindsight like prophecy. It wasn't prophecy. It was a string of tiny, reasonable choices. A safer route past crowded blocks. A lobby bathed in hotel brightness. 2 figures in a mirror-paneled elevator, the quick glance that says we're fine, we're fine. The doors slid shut. In the reflection, Lily's hair catches a slice of light, then it's gone as the car climbs. Floor numbers blink. A hallway stretches quiet as a held breath. Back in Ohio, her mother Evelyn saved every photo Lily sent, putting them into albums she never labeled because that felt too final. Her father Daniel kept his ringer up even when he slept, annoyed by the chirp but unwilling to miss a call. They knew Lily checked in. She always did. She would say goodnight even when it was morning where they were. Families build rhythms like nests. Break them, and every twig feels wrong. By 10:07 p.m., the elevator had delivered them to Brandon's floor. A camera watched but did not warn. A door closed in the middle distance like a mouth deciding to keep a secret. That detail matters later, when technicians scrub the video with new software and pull out shadows we didn't notice before, a small flick of a wrist, the angle of a shoulder, things that only feel meaningful because of what happens next. The digital record is indifferent. It never explains. It just watches forever. On Lily's birthday the next morning, her phone rang silent. Messages bounced. The voicemail greeting sounded too cheerful. The quiet that followed was not dramatic. It was sticky and ordinary, which is worse. At first, Austin police treated it the way they treat the hundreds of missing person reports that begin and end with a misunderstanding. She's new in town. Maybe she met friends. Maybe she went south for the day. But Lily's history pushes back. She called. She wrote. She kept promises like appointments. Detective Carla Rios stepped into the case with the patience of someone who respects routine because routine guards the edges of chaos. She walked the same blocks Lily walked. She stood near the same overwatered plants. She asked for receipts and keycard pulls and guest lists. She asked the hotel for elevator video and got a hunger's worth of pixels. She watched the up arrow glow at 9:42 p.m. She watched the doors part, then close again. She didn't see Lily come back down. In 2023, a new audit finds a gap that shouldn't exist. 3 minutes of log drift between a guest key and a master override on that hallway. It's not damning. It's not nothing. It is, once again, ordinary. But it pinches the timeline in a place no one noticed. And when timelines pinch, alibis do too. Watching the footage today, with better tools and slower blood, you feel the room narrow around the story you were told. The city keeps talking outside, music pulsing, rideshares idling, laughter spilling from patios. Somewhere, in one of those frames, a small choice becomes a dark corridor. The question isn't what happened upstairs. Not yet. The question is who knew what and when, and why the last door Lily walked through still refuses to open. The last hours move like a metronome you can't silence once you've heard it. At 6:11 p.m., Lily Hartman leaves her hostel lobby and turns toward the stretch of downtown Austin that glows before dinner, sidewalks warm, crosswalks obedient, strangers porous. She thumbs a voice note to Jenna, quick, bright, nothing of consequence, and pockets the phone as if it were one more promise she intends to keep. Brandon Cole is already moving in his own orbit, lingering by a hotel window that makes the city look cleaner than it is. He checks his reflection, checks the time, checks a story he plans to tell if anyone asks who he is. He collects stories the way other people collect receipts. They meet where noise protects first dates. The rooftop looks like a postcard, string lights, mismatched chairs, the kind of view that makes people forgive watered-down drinks. Lily orders something citrus and polite. Brandon orders something brown and direct. He talks about a temporary assignment that kept him in Austin longer than planned. He mentions investors, names no one can verify, a cousin who did something impressive with a team that wins on television. It's not grandstanding, it's bait. The trick works because it's ordinary. He offers small vulnerability, his grandmother's health, a job that fell through, so the larger invention hides in plain sight. Lily smiles cautiously. She is kind, not naive. Her laugh folds into the crowd, then returns to the table quieter, more focused. By 7:27 they're walking again, down past the grid of lights to a brick-walled bar that remembers better years. The air smells like lemons and old varnish. They sit near the end of the counter, shoulders angled, the space between them tightening with each story traded and tested. She texts Mark a photo of the skyline as a reassurance disguised as nothing. Brandon asks to hold her bag for a second, says he's making room on the narrow ledge. A quick lift of the strap, a polite nod from Lily, and then her bag is back where it belongs. It means nothing in the moment, which is why it matters later. He watches how she checks her phone, how often she glances toward the exit. He calculates comfort like a spreadsheet. At 8:41, they settle the bill. He covers with a grin and a dismissive wave like money is the least interesting thing about him. She thanks him but insists on Venmo. He laughs that off too. Outside, the crowd eddies around them. He suggests a late dessert. She says another time. He suggests a quick hello to a friend in the lobby across the street. She shrugs. Okay, 5 minutes, then I've got to call home. They step into the hotel brightness, a light that looks like honesty. The front desk is busy, the elevator is not. They find themselves alone in a mirrored box where everything is doubled except accountability. The camera documents what the room won't. 9:42 p.m., doors close, the arrow points up. Lily stands a half step away, her hands folded around her phone, the kind of posture you adopt when you're being careful and don't yet know why. Brandon faces the panel, one finger hovering, then dropping. He says something that makes her half smile, something forgettable on purpose. The car stops. The hallway holds its breath. They walk out together, turn left, then right, shrinking into the corridor's vanishing point. A door recognizes a key. The world decides not to intervene. Across town, Evelyn arranges tomorrow's birthday call in her head like a small ceremony. Daniel rinses mugs and lines them in the rack precisely because precision fends off worry. Mark replies to Lily's photo with a thumbs up she doesn't see. Jenna composes a message, deletes it, writes another, sends a heart. Routine hums like the refrigerator, steady and low. The family sleeps, each believing the others are awake enough to notice if anything's wrong. Detective Carla Rios will later say the vlog-style timelines people keep of their own lives can be a gift and a curse. They give you coordinates, but they also make you underestimate the space between them. At 10:07, a door shuts on Brandon's floor. There's no sound in the footage, so you imagine the soft hydraulic sigh and hate yourself for imagining anything at all. Downstairs, a night manager deals with a wedding block that has lost its patience. A bellhop lingers by the service elevator, scrolling. Routine holds. In 2023, when everything is revisited, a junior analyst notices a 3-minute discrepancy between a master key ping and a guest key unlock on that corridor. It could be a software update or a shift change or nothing at all. But the error nests inside a sequence that otherwise clicks like teeth, and once you see misalignment, you start to listen for the creak. Another pass through the elevator footage reveals a faint reflection of a phone screen where there shouldn't be one, a ghostly rectangle gliding past the stainless steel as the doors nearly close, then open again. It's not proof. It's friction. It irritates the narrative until the narrative bleeds ambiguity you can't ignore. We ask audiences to keep watching not because shock is entertainment but because attention is mercy, and mercy, here, looks like patience with detail. Stay with the data long enough and it begins to talk. Stay with the faces long enough and they begin to tell you what they hide. Somewhere between 9:42 and 10:07 p.m., a story sold itself as harmless. The bill is coming due. What did Brandon carry out of that elevator the second time the doors almost closed? And why does the camera catch only the shimmer, not the shape? On Tuesday, December 10th, the Hartmans filed the report. Missing adult, last seen Saturday night. It entered the system like hundreds do every year, but it didn't stay ordinary for long. Detective Carla Rios started at the edges, because edges fray first. She pulled card statements, ride-hail data, ATM cameras, and the hotel's access logs. She walked back Lily's steps until the city felt like a maze she'd already solved. Lily's phone stopped transmitting at 10:14 p.m., a clean cutoff that didn't match a drained battery. Brandon Cole's device, by contrast, turned into a chatterbox, brief bursts of activity, a search for store hours, a note tagged to himself with a shopping list that read more like a plan than a need. Receipts form a spine when a body is missing. At 9:13 a.m. Sunday, Brandon bought a large suitcase at a big box store off I-35, gray with rigid corners, the kind you buy when you're starting over or disappearing. An hour later, a bottle of multipurpose cleaner, gloves, and a roll of contractor-grade bags showed up on his debit line. At noon, the rental counter printed a contract for a red compact sedan with generous trunk space. The clerk remembered him because he was chatty in a way that felt rehearsed, offering details no one asked for, family in San Antonio, a last-minute flight, that smile that turned explanation into lubricant. Rios mapped the purchases to travel times. She checked the hotel's loading dock camera, which saw more truth than the front lobby. At 9:32 p.m. Sunday, a cart crossed the frame with 2 items stacked and strapped, corners and handles aligned. The video had no sound, so the scene looked like choreography. At 9:40 p.m., a man matching Brandon's build eased the cart through a side door toward the alley, away from valet and conversation. The sedan's trunk opened as if on cue. The cart returned lighter. A woman came forward after the news segment aired, her voice trembling through the tip line even though months had passed. She had matched with Brandon late Sunday afternoon and met him for coffee because a public place felt like a shield. He'd talked too fast, veering into morbid what-ifs couched as jokes, lines about hiding mistakes and how people underestimate scrubbers. She left before the second cup, hugged herself all the way to the parking lot, declined his offer for a ride with a polite half-smile she practiced on the walkout. She saved the messages anyway. Sometimes survival starts as a habit you can't name. The sedan's built-in telematics filled in what patience couldn't. It pinged a stretch of FM 1431, then a smaller road that locals use to reach trailheads near Balcones Canyonlands. The car stopped for 17 minutes at a pull-off that looked like nothing unless you knew where to stand. License plate readers along the route confirmed the timing. A deputy who hikes there on his days off took Rios to the turnout and pointed beyond the mesquite to a thin line of disturbed earth that only looked natural if you didn't want to know better. She called it in without raising her voice. The response moved like a zipper closing. Search teams worked in a disciplined hush. They flagged impressions, not conclusions. A patch of soil that had settled too fast. Stray fibers that matched nothing nearby. On Monday, December 16th, as winter light thinned, they uncovered what they expected to find and feared to name. We won't describe it here. Not because we can't, but because this story isn't a spectacle. What matters is that the discovery was documented, preserved, carried with respect. What matters is that a path back to Lily's family opened, and the path toward truth got shorter by 1.5 miles. Back at the hotel, Rios rewatched everything. She slowed the elevator footage and stared at frames that looked identical until they weren't. She noted how Brandon avoided cameras like a person who had learned their angles rather than someone surprised by them. She watched a housekeeping supervisor swipe a master key at 9:58 a.m. Sunday, then back up one step, then swipe again, a small flinch she only noticed after seeing it 5 times. She checked the work order. It listed, spill assessment, an innocuous phrase that fit a world where bad things are named gently. In 2023, the audit made those details louder. A forensics tech restored faint metadata from the sedan's infotainment system, a fragment that placed a navigation search at 7:06 a.m. Sunday for a scenic overlook locals use for sunrise photos. An analyst stitched together parking garage entry scans and found that Brandon had left on foot at 7:52 a.m., then returned with the car at 9:22, then left again at 9:38, each movement nested like parentheses around a single purpose. None of this is cinematic. It's worse. It's procedural. It's the quiet violence of time aligning around intent. When Rios called Evelyn with the update, she spoke carefully, building a bridge sentence by sentence so the truth wouldn't drown the person receiving it. Daniel took the phone and asked the question all parents ask when hope is thin and denial is a grammar they no longer speak. Are you sure? Rios told him what she could and promised what she wouldn't. No speculation, no theater. Evidence would have to stand on its own legs. It did. A different question lingers, and it will decide what comes next. If Brandon rehearsed this, where did he learn the steps? Interrogation rooms are built to make time heavy. The air barely moves. The clock seems louder than it should. When Brandon Cole sits down across from Detective Carla Rios, he touches the table first, as if testing its temperature, then the chair back, then the bottle of water. He asks if this is formal or casual. Rios tells him it's a conversation. He smiles at the word and repeats it like he wants to own it. For the first 20 minutes he is a model of ordinary. They met for drinks, they laughed, they parted at the corner near the hotel. He claims a quick hug, a kiss on the cheek, an early night. He says Lily Hartman was alive when he last saw her. He says it like a line he has already practiced into muscle memory. Rios doesn't argue. She opens a folder but doesn't look at it. She asks him to walk her through the route in his own words. He obliges, generous with landmarks, stingy with minutes. He remembers the music in the first bar but not the bartender's face. He remembers the shape of a street performer's hat but not which way Lily turned at the lobby. When Rios asks whether he went upstairs, he shakes his head, casual, as if the idea were slightly beneath him. He says he doesn't like elevators. She notes it, then slides a still frame between them. Brandon examines his own reflection in the brushed steel doors and frowns like a critic considering a photograph that doesn't flatter him. He says that could be anyone. She says the timestamp is 9:42 p.m. He swallows. He shrugs. He says he didn't realize the clock was the point. He offers a second version without being asked, a softer pivot that folds in the elevator but leaves out the room. They rode up to avoid a crowded lobby, he says, then came back down. He doesn't know where she went after that. Rios listens, then introduces something small that the 2023 audit made visible, a 3-minute drift between a master key ping and a guest unlock on his corridor. He asks what a ping is. She explains the basics. He asks if that proves anything. She says it proves a timeline can tighten. He taps the bottle. He asks for a break. He doesn't stand. When Brandon comes back, he brings the third story with him like a jacket he hopes will change the weather. He says Lily went upstairs with him willingly. He says things became intimate and then complicated. He never uses the word accident, but the word hovers. He suggests he panicked afterward. He insists he fell asleep in the bathroom, the kind of detail designed to sound embarrassing and therefore true. Rios doesn't flinch. She asks why, If panic was the point, his card trail marched so neatly through a suitcase, a cleaner, contractor bags, a rental sedan, and a Sunday morning route toward the canyonlands. He says he doesn't know what she's talking about. She pushes a receipt forward with one finger. He stares at the date like a person trying to read without his glasses. There is a moment in interviews when theater collapses and the set walls show their seams. For Brandon, it arrives not with a confession but with an arithmetic error. He misremembers the time he returned to the parking garage by 30 minutes. It's small enough to be human but large enough to matter when paired with entry scans and a telematics ping. Rios doesn't crow. She doesn't need to. She simply lets the silence hold the shape of his mistake. He fills it with an apology that isn't an apology, then a new claim that he went out for ice, then an aside about how stress makes people remember out of order. He has a theory for everything except the one thing that would make any sense. Rios asks if he will provide a voluntary DNA sample. He says yes immediately, as if speed equals innocence. She asks if he will let them look through his phone. He says he has nothing to hide, then asks how long it will take. She says it depends on cooperation. He nods with an almost theatrical weariness, like a good sport having a bad day. The forensic team later recovers a search from his infotainment system at 7:06 a.m. Sunday for a scenic overlook north of the city. His phone shows a late-night trawl through cleaning tutorials and a series of location queries that hopscotch toward the place where the ground looked wrong to a deputy's eye. In a different corner of the precinct, a woman waits to speak with an officer. She met Brandon once, months before Lily came to Austin. Their coffee lasted 40 minutes. He monologued about being misunderstood and joked about cameras that see too much. She went home with a feeling she didn't like naming and blocked his number anyway. She never considered it evidence until she saw his blurred face on the news. Now her voice shakes as she repeats a line he used that day. A line about how people forgive a confident story if you keep talking. Rios writes it down because patterns are maps, and maps, in the end, are how you get somewhere you don't want to go. By the time Brandon asks whether he's under arrest, the room has already answered him. The question now is what the jury will hear first, the elevator's indifferent eye or the minutes he can't account for. The courthouse in late 2020 felt like a machine built to sift certainty from noise. Jurors filed in with the solemn focus of people who know their decision will live longer than the day. Brandon Cole took his seat at the defense table dressed like an apology. The mask of ordinary served him well until evidence started stacking in neat, unemotional layers. Elevator frames, access logs, receipts, telemetry, the quiet chorus that had followed him from downtown Austin to the edge of the canyonlands. The prosecution didn't try to stir outrage. They did something colder. They arranged time. Detective Carla Rios sat behind the prosecutors, hands folded, eyes fixed on the monitor. She'd seen it all 100 times, but in court the footage gained a different gravity. 9:42 p.m., the elevator doors closing on two reflected figures. 10:07 p.m., a door on Brandon's floor shutting. Then the Sunday cadence no one can explain as panic. The suitcase with rigid corners, the cleaner, the contractor bags, the rental contract, the red sedan slipping north just after sunrise. A forensics analyst spoke evenly about the sedan's infotainment ping at 7:06 a.m., the scenic overlook search preserved like a fingerprint in code. A second analyst described the 2023 audit that tightened a 3-minute drift between a master key ping and a guest unlock, small on its own, telling in context, the way a single mismatched stitch can give away an entire forgery. The defense rose to reframe the story as a tragic misadventure that spiraled into fear. They asked the jury to hear the word accident without hearing the word excuse. Their expert testified about memory errors under stress. Their cross-examination tried to loosen the timeline by tugging at individual seconds. They returned again and again to the absence of sound on the videos, as if silence were kindness. They said Brandon made terrible choices after a terrible outcome and that the law distinguishes between intent and horror. They did not mention Lily Hartman by name as often as they mentioned Brandon's fear. When Evelyn took the stand, the room changed temperature. She spoke softly, because grief taught her that volume wastes breath. She said Lily called home from airports and sidewalks, The way children do when they don't want to stop being children all at once. She said there is a chair at the end of their table that everyone avoids because absence is loudest where you used to sit. Daniel followed, steady as a beam holding up a ceiling. He did not ask the jury for anything. He told them who Lily was before the elevator doors closed, who she would have been if the morning had been ordinary. Sometimes the strongest argument for justice is simply a biography in present tense. Rios testified last for the state. She never said the word pattern, but she laid one out. A man who curates his image, calculates comfort, and moves through cameras like a person near water who has learned where not to step. She narrated the receipts like mile markers. She explained why the difference between 7:52 and 8:22 a.m. mattered in a garage where entry scans archive truth without judgment. She avoided adjectives. In a case like this, adjectives feel like theater. The jury asked to rehear the instructions on intent. They asked for the timeline poster. They asked for the rental car contract and the map with the turnout circled in dry red ink. Then they went back and did the hardest thing people can do together: agree. The verdict came after hours that stretched and snapped. Guilty. Brandon sat very still, as if stillness could reorganize what had already been said out loud. Sentencing followed with the same slow dignity that had marked the trial. Life, with a minimum term that means numbers will keep track of what words cannot. The judge spoke about vulnerability and power and the duty strangers owe each other. No speech fixes a hole, but it can name its edges so we don't fall in again. Austin handled the aftermath like a community that knows both how to celebrate and how to mourn. There were vigils that winter, small pools of candlelight along the river and on courthouse steps. There were care kits packed in Lily's name for women seeking safe rooms and clean starts. Friends compiled her photos into a short video set to a song she loved, and the comments filled with strangers who recognized something in the way she looked at the horizon. The Hartmans accepted help with the kind of grace that doesn't pretend gratitude erases ache. And still, a story like this refuses to stop at a period. In 2023, a procedural appeal flickered through the docket, and with it came a new review of digital evidence that most cases never get. An anonymous email landed in the inbox of a small documentary team working on unsolved disappearances around Texas. The sender claimed Brandon once told a bar acquaintance that hotel cameras are easy to fool if you keep the doors moving and your face turned to metal. It read like a boast then. It reads like a seam now. If verified, it doesn't undo a verdict. It does something subtler. It suggests practice. The case was supposed to end with the gavel. Instead, it opens a narrower door, one that leads from verdict to motive, from motive to method, and from method to the question no one wants to ask out loud. Was Lily the first time he tried this, or simply the first time the city noticed? In 2023, the case returned, not with fanfare, but with the friction of new questions rubbing against old certainties. The appeal was procedural, a narrow doorway most files slipped through untouched, but a small documentary outfit had asked the police for public records and uploaded a clean version of the hotel footage. The internet did what it does: paused, zoomed, argued, and one viewer saw something everyone else missed. A faint glint at the elevator seemed just before the doors met, like a doorstop used by a hand you couldn't see. It was nothing on its own. It was gravity when added to the drifted key logs. Detective Carla Rios didn't roll her eyes at crowdsourcing. She folded the tip into the stack and asked the hotel for a deeper pull, not just guest entries, but housekeeping routes, engineering overrides, the training memo that told night staff what to do if a guest complained about a sticking latch. That memo had been updated in late 2019, and the update required a master swipe followed by a second scan to confirm. On Brandon Cole's floor, 2 scans pinged 3 minutes apart. It still wasn't a firework. It was a tempo change. A rideshare driver came forward next, because shame takes time to loosen its grip. He'd accepted a 7:41 a.m. pickup on December 8th near the hotel's service entrance, canceled at 7:46 when the pin moved across the street, then watched a red compact roll out on his left as he pulled away. He remembered it because he'd muttered about lost fares and because the driver had made tight, careful turns like someone was testing a new rental. He'd never connected the morning to the news until the documentary thumbnail threw up that hotel's mirrored lobby, and something in his chest told him to stop pretending memory was courtesy. Rios requested Lily Hartman's cloud backups from the provider again, this time with a warrant that specified drafts and cache traces from the night mode camera. The folder wasn't a miracle, but it carried the echo of one, a corrupted boomerang clip created at 9:39 p.m. in the hotel lobby, never posted, frozen at the first loop. Two silhouettes. A tilt of Lily's head, the playful kind you send your sister because the light makes you look older and younger at once. A smear of a hand entering frame as if to block or to join. It didn't say what happened next. It said she was still measuring the night as a night, not a risk. The anonymous email to the filmmakers took on a new shape once the cloud file hit Rios's desk. The writer claimed Brandon had once bragged, months earlier at a friend of a friend's birthday, about how nothing spooks a camera-like motion that never finishes, doors that almost close, hallways you exit and re-enter so the film always thinks you're coming or going. The guest list gave Rios a witness who remembered that birthday. He didn't want to involve himself. He didn't like courtrooms. But he could repeat a sentence he wished he'd ignored. People forgive confidence if you keep the story moving. Rios called Evelyn to explain why the review mattered. She didn't promise reversals. She promised clarity where Gray had lived too long. The Hartmans came to Austin for the first time since sentencing. They didn't visit the hotel. They walked the river instead, because grief needs pathways, and the city offered one. At a low wall near the water, Jenna tied a ribbon around a rusted ring and said Lily's name under her breath, as if names lose strength if you say them too loudly. Daniel listened. He'd learned to let silence carry his half of the prayer. The district attorney's office chose not to retry anything that wasn't on the table. They filed the new findings with the appeals court and wrote a letter for the record. The digital timeline is tighter now, and the method is clearer. It reads like a warning to anyone who thinks intention dissolves in the dark. Brandon's counsel issued a statement about narrative bias and technology's fallibility. He has the right to say that. The evidence has the right to remain what it is. What stayed with the city wasn't spectacle but calibration. Women who travel alone compared notes and changed small habits without giving up the parts of life that make it worth leaving the house. Men who love women learn to insist on good plans and to show up on time without turning protection into control. Bars trained staff to notice the too helpful hand and the smile that doesn't crease the eyes. A hotel updated its policy again so master keys leave louder footprints. If you stand one evening at the edge of the Canyonlands turnout where a deputy saw the earth breathe wrong, you'll hear wind comb dry grass and a faint traffic hush laid over rock. It's not a memorial. It's not even a place you can find without instructions. But it holds a change the way a book holds a thumb-smudged page. Lily's life doesn't end here any more than it ended in an elevator. It continues in all the choices people make because she did everything right and someone else did not. We keep telling this story not to keep the wound open, but to keep the door closed on what tries to enter when no one's looking. What we learn is simple and useful. Attention saves time. Small precautions do too. Share your plan. Ride with a friend when a place feels off. Listen to the voice that tells you to leave, and believe the friend who says they saw something. Trust doesn't mean silence. It means we carry one another through the ordinary, so the night stays a night.